Mister.
Hey everyone, Mr. MC here. This is a lap guy for Nurburgring 24hr with the Beetle Gr 3. Let's do this. Start your brake before the path on the left ends. Try to get yourself as close to the apex as possible, and you can accelerate a little more and give yourself a little more space between you and the second apex. You can also brake a little more just to get your car adjusted, and then as you go through the second apex, just give yourself a little more space, go a little wide before you start to fully accelerate. Start your brake as soon as you pass the path on the right. As you go through the turn, get your car on the left side because you'll need to brake again shortly after this turn. Start to slow down when the curb on the left ends. As you're halfway through the turn, you can start to gradually accelerate and make sure your car is fully stabilized before you fully accelerate. Start your brake shortly after you enter the gray area on the left. As you're halfway through the turn, you can input some throttle, and as soon as your car is starting to go to the left side, start to fully accelerate. With this car, it's possible to go through this section at full throttle. As soon as you enter the curb on the right, start to turn. Brake before you reach the 100-meter mark. As you go through this turn, make sure you go at half throttle, don't accelerate too early, and get your car to the left side as soon as you can because you'll need to brake shortly after for the next turn. Brake for a moment here and make sure you don't accelerate too early because you don't want to end up in the gravel pits. Rather, just gradually accelerate. Start to brake before you reach the 50-meter sign. Since this part is not as sharp as the GP version, you can start to fully accelerate as soon as you pass the first apex. Start your brake right around here. This turn is a little interesting because the apex is very late into the turn, so you won't need to accelerate until the very end. Get your car on the right side because you'll need to brake just after you pass the pit wall. Release the throttle and start to turn as soon as you pass to this 2-kilometer sign. As you brake here, make sure you don't hit too much of the curb on the left because that can throw your car's balance off and potentially lose control. Brake a little heavily for this first turn, and as you go through the second turn, you can brake just a little more just to get the car adjusted. Slow down a good amount for this first half of the turn, that way you can exit the second half of the turn at a much faster speed. Release the throttle for just a moment before you start to fully accelerate again. Since this car doesn't have the highest top speed, unlike the McLaren F1 GTR, you can do this for just a moment and then just carry onwards, whereas with the other car, you have to slow down a bit more. You can ease off the throttle a bit right here just to make the turn before you start to fully accelerate again. And after the curb on the left ends, start to brake. Start to slow down before you reach the sign on the right. There's a little jump at the top of this hill, so be aware of that. And make sure you get on the left side as soon as you can because you'll need to slow down even more for the next series of turns. Brake a little more just before you reach the crosswalk that's ahead of you, and get your car to the left side as soon as you can, so that way you can go on the inside, hit the apex, and accelerate your way out. Brake for a moment around here. You can actually carry through this turn at a relatively high speed, and since this car has really good handling, you can go through it without too much worry. Heavily brake here for this turn since it's a little sharp, and just carefully accelerate your way out. Brake shortly after you pass the sign on the left, and make sure your car is fully stabilized and pointing towards the track before you start to fully accelerate. Use about half of your braking power so you can slow down just enough to get through these turns without a worry. Start to brake heavily here. Make sure you do this so you don't end up hitting the wall that's here or further out. After you finish a turn, you can short shift your way up to about 3rd gear so you don't have to worry about spinning out. Start to brake when the curb on the right ends. Make sure you don't go too wide on this turn because this is one of those areas where you can get a penalty if you do that. Before the curb on the left ends, brake for a moment, and as soon as you pass the apex, you can continue to go at full throttle. Brake heavily before you pass the sign on the right. You can go at half throttle as you go through this turn, and once you're pointing towards the track up ahead, then you can fully accelerate. Before the gray curb on the right ends, you can just release the throttle for a moment as you start to turn. Start to brake when your car is in line with the curb on the left. Make sure you don't accelerate out of this turn too early as it can be easy to spin out over here. Start to brake when your car is in this tree's shadow over here. You can actually go through this turn at a surprising amount of speed, and as soon as you're starting to exit the turn, you can start to fully accelerate. Start to brake around here. You can do some throttle control as you go through these two turns to make sure you stay on track. Slow down a bit more here as this turn goes a bit more inward. Slow down a bit more here as it can be easy to overshoot it, and from here on out, stay on 4th gear. Use about half of your braking here to make it through this turn. Brake hard for a moment here and stay on the right side. Brake hard for a moment and stay on the left side as you gradually accelerate. Brake hard for a moment again and don't go too wide as this is another area where you can get a penalty. Fully brake here for a moment and just gradually accelerate your way out. Brake here and you can shift down a gear if you need a bit more power as you exit the turn. Brake for a moment just before you do this jump, and you can start to fully accelerate as soon as you pass the apex. Brake around here. You can go through this turn at about half throttle, then you can accelerate more before you need to slow down even more for the next turn. Brake before the gray curb on the right ends. Make sure you stabilize your car, and I would suggest completing the turn before you fully accelerate. Brake around here and go as inside as you can, and after you finish the turn, then you can fully accelerate. Brake for a moment before the curb on the left ends. Go out about half throttle through this turn for just a moment before you fully accelerate. This is just to make sure that the car actually makes a turn. Brake when the curb on the right ends. This is the best spot to brake without having to worry about going off track. Stay on third gear as you go through this section because the track feels a little bumpy, and being on third gear, the car stays a bit more stable. And that's all for this video. This is a difficult track. Be patient with it, give it some time, and I hope you found this video useful. This is Mr. MCA, the world's most okay player, and I'll see you in the next video.